Welcome to Adu Globe. Discover new ideas, learn exciting things, and be amazed every day. In this video, we'll be sharing the latest and most verified information about the losses in the Russia-Ukraine war. All details are based on credible international reports and presented in a neutral way. Since the situation continues to change every day, some facts may be updated over time. Stay with us until the end, as we'll uncover insights and details that are often missed in mainstream news. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has become one of the most talked about events of our time. Every day, new reports surface about the losses faced on both sides, losses that are not only military, but also economic and humanitarian. In this video, we will take a closer look at the overall impact of this war, focusing on verified reports and neutral analysis. From the number of troops lost, to the destruction of equipment, and the toll on resources, we will break down the data so you can understand the bigger picture. Our goal here is not to take sides, but to inform you with facts gathered from credible international sources. Since the situation changes rapidly, some details may continue to evolve, but this breakdown will give you a clear idea of where things stand today. Stay tuned till the end, because we'll also highlight comparisons and patterns that are often missed in mainstream discussions. The Russia-Ukraine conflict traces its roots back to 2014, when Russian forces moved into Crimea under the cover of unmarked troops. That annexation, widely considered disputed on the world stage, became the spark for unrest across eastern Ukraine. In the Donbass region, particularly Donetsk and Luhansk, separatist groups emerged, and Moscow's backing gave them the confidence to challenge Kyiv's control. What began as localized tension gradually evolved into one of the most significant geopolitical crises of the 21st century. Fast forward to early 2022, Western intelligence warned of an unusual and massive Russian military buildup near Ukraine's borders. Satellite images, troop movements, and international briefings signaled that something much larger was at stake. Diplomatic efforts unfolded, from European leaders pushing for negotiations to Washington issuing repeated warnings, but every attempt failed to ease the situation. Russia insisted that NATO expansion must be curbed, while Ukraine maintained its sovereign right to choose its path. On February 24, 2022, the tension turned into a full-scale military invasion. Moscow described its operation in terms of demilitarization and denazification, but on the ground, it quickly became clear that Kyiv would not collapse easily. Ukrainian forces, alongside ordinary citizens, stood their ground with a resistance that surprised the world. Within days, headlines shifted from predicting a swift Russian victory to documenting Ukrainian counterattacks and resilience. The global response was immediate and multifaceted. The United States, the European Union, and NATO allies launched sweeping sanctions targeting Russian banks, trade, and technology sectors. Travel bans were placed on key figures, assets were frozen, and unprecedented levels of military and financial assistance were directed to Ukraine. Anti-war demonstrations erupted worldwide, showing how deeply this conflict resonated across societies. But beyond sanctions and diplomacy lies the human story: millions of civilians displaced, families separated, and communities living under daily uncertainty. Energy markets were shaken, food security became a growing concern, and global economies felt ripple effects. The war is not just about territory, it is about the shifting balance of international order. And yet, the questions remain. Can diplomacy still find a way forward? Will economic pressure alone change the course of war? How long can ordinary people endure the disruption of daily life? Each of these questions shapes not only Ukraine's future, but also the world's. This video does not aim to provide answers but to present the facts, the timeline, and the key reactions in a way that helps viewers understand how this war began, how it unfolded, and why it matters today. By looking at events through a neutral lens, we invite you to reflect, analyze, and ask your own questions about what could come next. In the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, personnel attrition has reached very high levels. According to independent research by the Center for Strategic and International Studies (CSIS), by the summer of 2025 Russia's total personnel losses, including killed, wounded, missing, and incapacitated, are estimated at close to 1 million. Ukrainian personnel losses are also significant, though at a comparatively lower scale. These figures are based on open-source data, battlefield assessments, and Allied intelligence. Independent verification platforms such as BBC Russian service Mediazona have tracked Russian personnel attrition through name-by-name identification. Their lists, although incomplete, provide a verified minimum baseline. This highlights that official tallies may differ from what independent monitoring shows, and the true figure is likely higher. On the equipment side, open source, visually confirmed data has been critical. Oryx, for example, has documented thousands of visually confirmed losses on both sides: destroyed, captured, or abandoned vehicles. While carefully cross-checked to avoid duplication, these records represent only the minimum confirmed losses. The real number is usually higher, since not every incident is captured on photo or video. In 2024-25, the strain on heavy ground platforms became especially clear. Analysts report that Russia lost approximately 1,400 tanks in 2024 alone. Despite efforts to increase production, replacing such numbers proved challenging, with many of the replacements coming from older, less capable models. This highlights a growing reliance on quantity rather than quality, while also increasing the burden on manpower. Independent monitoring has also shown that Russia's wider fleet of infantry fighting vehicles, IFVs, self-propelled artillery, and armored vehicles has been reduced by the thousands during the war. Ukraine has also sustained notable equipment losses, but the overall trend shows Russian attrition in heavy platforms at a larger scale. Exact numbers vary between reporting sources, but the general direction is clear. Large volumes of heavy equipment have been consumed on both sides. Air losses are another complex area. Claims are often inconsistent, requiring careful cross-checking. For example, after several strikes on Russian air bases in mid-2025, some Ukrainian sources reported very high numbers of destroyed aircraft. However, subsequent U.S. intelligence briefings suggested that the number of aircraft actually destroyed or damaged was lower than initially claimed. This demonstrates how air loss figures can be subject to major discrepancies depending on the source. Platforms such as War Spotting continue to update live databases of visually confirmed equipment losses, categorizing them into tanks, IFVs, artillery, and more. Again, these figures only represent what is proven with imagery, meaning the real total is inevitably higher than what is documented. This war is not only being fought on the battlefield, it is striking at the very heart of economies. Ukraine's economy shrank by nearly 30% in 2022. According to the World Bank, the country will need around $524 billion for full recovery. That number isn't just statistics, it's a picture of years of struggle ahead. Infrastructure has been hit hard. Before the conflict, Ukraine's power generation capacity was about 56 gigawatts. Today, it's down to only 9. Over 139,000 square kilometers of land are contaminated with landmines, keeping farmers away from their fields and threatening future harvests. The energy crisis has made daily life even harder. Household electricity use has dropped by 20%, while industrial demand has fallen by 50%. In some regions, people endured blackouts lasting up to 16 hours a day during the summer. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development projects that Ukraine's economy will grow only 3.3% in 2025. Moody's warns that high debt and labor shortages mean recovery will be slow. Yet, if peace is achieved, growth could reach 5% within a year. Russia, too, is under pressure. Western sanctions pushed its GDP down by about 2% in 2022, and nearly $300 billion of foreign reserves remain frozen. Restrictions on oil and gas exports have cost the country millions of euros per day. Still, Russia has redirected much of its trade toward China and India, softening some of the economic impact. For ordinary people, the consequences are heavy. In Ukraine, rising prices have placed enormous strain on families. In Russia, official unemployment remains below 2%, but many industries are quietly cutting back on production. In the end, this war is not only about factories, currency, or power grids. It is about people. It is about every family waiting in the dark for the lights to come back on. It is about every worker worried about losing their job. And it is about every community still holding on to the hope that one day, peace will return, and both life and economies can finally breathe again. This war is no longer only about geopolitics, it has become a human emergency that shapes daily life for millions. Our goal here is neutral, verified information, presented with care. Displacement and broken routines. The UN reports that millions of people inside Ukraine have been displaced, while more than 6 million have registered as refugees across Europe by late 2024. Behind every figure are families, children, and seniors whose everyday routines, school, work, and home, were interrupted. Power, water, and basic services. Damage to energy infrastructure sharply reduced Ukraine's available electricity generation in 2024. Communities experienced rolling outages. Heating, clean water, and municipal services were frequently strained. Households cut usage, industries scaled back, and many neighborhoods planned their days around the next window of power. Winters under pressure. Colder months made everything harder. Without reliable heat and light, families spent long evenings conserving warmth, checking on neighbors, and prioritizing essentials, food, medicine, and communication. Civilian impact. Reported in careful terms. UN-verified civilian casualties are recorded in the tens of thousands, including both loss of life and injuries. These verified counts represent a minimum. The lived experience is broader. Families separated, communities coping with grief, and teachers, nurses, and workers trying to keep vital services running. Sanctions and ripple effects in Russia. Wide-ranging restrictions have limited financial access, constrained technology imports, and complicated international travel. Hundreds of billions of state reserves remain frozen, and many businesses have had to adjust supply chains and payments. While some trade has been redirected to alternative partners, inflation and import constraints continue to pressure household budgets. Prices, jobs, and everyday choices. Across the region, higher prices have stretched paychecks. In some places official unemployment remains low, yet labor markets are imbalanced. Certain sectors face shortages while others reduce output. For families, it shows up as careful budgeting, postponed purchases, and a focus on essentials. A neutral closing thought. This is not a story about winning or losing. It is about people. A parent reading homework by flashlight during an outage, an elderly neighbor waiting for a clinic to reopen, a small shop finding new suppliers just to stay afloat. The numbers help us understand the scale. The human choices show the cost. Recovery will depend on safety, steady services, and sustained support, on both sides, for ordinary people who simply want life to feel normal again. In every war, the loudest sounds are not only the echoes of missiles or the rumble of tanks, but also the silent cries of ordinary people. Both Ukraine and Russia have endured heavy losses. Cities that once carried life and joy are now marked with destruction. Families that once dreamed of a better tomorrow are struggling with displacement, separation, and uncertainty. On one side, Ukrainians face damaged infrastructure, shortages of electricity, water, and other basic needs. On the other, Russian civilians carry the weight of sanctions, rising costs, and restrictions that affect their everyday lives. In the end, both societies, in their own ways, are paying a very high price. When we look closely, we see there are no real winners in war. The true victim is humanity itself. Mothers waiting for their sons to return, children forced to grow up too quickly, and the elderly longing for peace. History shows us that wars may stop on paper, but the pain continues for generations. So dear viewers, what do you think? Who has suffered more in this war? Or is it humanity itself that has paid the greatest price? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this video touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support our channel, as we continue to bring you more informative stories. Together, let's hope for a world where peace is stronger than war, and compassion is louder than conflict.